Yeah.
So I think you also have to be prepared that when you get your contract
you gotta
and
start
there's
from
something
scratch.
in there that you don't like, don't do it. You gotta start from scratch. It happens.
Yeah.
The first few months are like a shit show. It is hectic because they're taking over bank accounts. They have to change EIN numbers. You have to sign this form. You have to sign this form. This thing forgot to get signed. They need to transfer this over here. Okay, so JW then just started pimping us out to all these DSOs. Honestly, it felt like I was back in college again when I was like rushing a fraternity. I mean, it was just JW had, at first 20 different DSOs that were in his mix, and then he dwindled it down, and then we had the initial thing was doing calls with some of these groups or DSOs. So I think we had maybe 5 or 6 that he had narrowed down that had kind of hit some of our requirements. It's hard to hit all those. I mean, I had a lot. And then the first part was just going through these different DSOs and learning about their models and what their goals were and if we were a good fit. And honestly, once we got those 6, it dwindled down fast to about 2 that we were interested in.
Okay. And that we're also interested in you guys.
Yes.
Were you? Yeah.
Yes. So we got down to the kind of the last 2 that we were going between. And to give some context, I've been talking about this as us doing our own practice. We did sell our practice at the same time with a few of our friends. So we did kind of group up together. We weren't our own DSO or anything like that. It was just a few friends that all wanted to sell at the same time. So if you hear me use we, it's our group.
Yeah, it's not me. It's you and some buddies of ours that we ran very similar offices.
Yep.
So it's like it could have been,
it was a duct tape. It would be duct tape, but no, we didn't have like the same accounting. Or
none of that.
We
But
just had the same PMS systems and a lot of the same systems.
Yeah, the same systems, and they were all ran really well.
Yep.
Pretty lean, like good operators and stuff
Yep.
like that. So you had asked. Yeah, you guys were all kind of at that same point of like, do we really want to continue doing this, or is this our out? And yeah, a couple of you guys were like, yeah, let's just all do this together and kind of roll this up into, a couple practice or multiple practices to have better numbers, to make it more enticing for a DSO.
And so when we got down to the final group, that was one thing that we initially said is, hey, if we all choose you, we'll all do it at the same time. And we'll have, now instead of having to deal with my 2 practices and this guy's 2 practices and this guy's 1 practice, you can close on like 6 or 7 at the same time. And they're all good practices.
Yeah.
Like we said, they're all fairly newer practices.
I said that
They've
already,
they were good. And so the one group agreed to that, and that agreement meant that they were willing to even give us a little bit higher of a valuation if we did that. So we did use that as leverage. Mm-hmm. So then got on to the next phase, right? So we picked the group. We knew who we wanted to be with. And the next phase of it was all like the LOI phase.
Okay.
So that's where we just agreed to very general terms. The DSO had very basic numbers of each of our practices and said, we think you're worth about this much.
Yeah. And we're going to buy this much, like 60, 40, 70, 30. It was like very like basic stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
All that was going to be renegotiated and change.
Okay.
During that process too, though, we had agreed that we weren't going to continue looking at other partners. Like we would just focus on them.
This is now we're in like an exclusive relationship.
Yep, exactly.
We're like, all right, I think you're okay. Let's not date anyone else.
Yeah.
And let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for me, this is where like the really fun part started, because now I got to look at all the line items, look at everything, right? I did that initially a little bit, and I was trying to run the practice as well, but now they were getting to the point where they're like, we need to value how much you're worth. Mm-hmm. There is no other point I don't think, in any of our lives where every time you save $1, you're going to get $6 to $8 back. And what I mean by that is every single time you can add one more dollar to your profit or add something back, it's 6x's or 8x's, right? Just depending on what your valuation is. That's crazy returns.
Yep.
So for me, I was like, I will spend as much time as I need to find every little thing possible to make this beefed up as much as it can be.
Yep.
Because when else is that going to happen? So
yeah, I remember we went line by line on each thing we went back a year.
Yep. So we knew when they were going to
start like the 12,
value us.
Yeah.
So our time frame, right? We closed with them in September of 2023. So we knew the period was going to be, we negotiated with them. The period was going to be August 2022 through end of July 2023 was going to be our period.
Yep.
So I went back to August.
Well, you did drag me into this.
I did drag you into this. I made you do this stuff
yes,
with me.
Yes.
I think I just got you like hyped up.
No, I wasn't hyped up. I was like, oh, no, you're like, what is this Amazon charge? And I'm like, oh, let me bring up the receipt for you.
So I went into our books starting on August 1st and just line item by line item went through every single thing and said, was this something that was a personal expense or was this a business expense?
Yep.
We call those add backs, right? Because you're adding it back into your profit. Because when the DSO is going to buy you, moving forward, that will probably not be an expense. So you can add those back.
So for an example, like if our meals, like if we went out and charged, dinner to the company or like our business, that isn't.
Yeah, and we talked about business, but that isn't something that we would do moving forward.
Well, right, because we're out of the business. Someone's buying us. They're not going to have that same expense, so we put that back on.
Yep. So it was a lot of those, and it's a lot of one-time expenses. So those you can add back as well. So example, let's say we expanded at Columbine fairly recently. When we had to equip an op, you had to buy a new stool, you had to buy a lot of furniture stuff. Those are all one-time expenses. You shouldn't have to replace that at a normal frequency.
Yeah.
If you had to buy a new Max-Ray or a Nomad, those kind of things you can add back because they have a long enough lifespan where you can add it back.
Yep.
So I spent probably
we spent hours
hundreds
and
of hours just looking through everything. So if there's one piece of advice for anyone looking to sell and you're selling where you have the opportunity to put ad backs in, you can't spend enough time trying to beef up your practice as much as you can. Yeah. So we went through and did that. And we ended up, at first you get aggressive and you're like, I want to add every single thing back, right? I want everything to be back. And then, we presented that to JW. He kind of vetted it and was like, yeah, that's good. That's not kosher. That's good. And then we sent it to the DSO and their team to do what they call their quality of earnings. So we kind of showed them, we think this is what the practice is actually worth.
Yeah.
And then they had their third-party company go through and evaluate it. Mm-hmm. And then it just becomes a back and forth, right? We say it's worth this much, they say it's worth that much. And then we start discussing.
Negotiations,
so it was a lot of back and forth on what do you include, what do you not include. There are no hard set rules on that. It is all deal dependent. It is all DSO dependent on what they want to decide to add back or not. So we went through that. That part we could do a lot of negotiating on, which is really fun and cool. And the part we really couldn't do a lot on is once they agreed to a certain multiple, that stayed pretty constant. That was hard to post LOI negotiate up and down.
Okay.
And so that's what we spent. We did the LOI with them in May of 2023.
Okay.
And probably spent the next 3 months going through all that quality of earnings. The other big things we had to do, it was dealing with landlords, getting leases assigned. That is a pain
we didn't
in
do
the
it
ass.
then. We didn't.
We started
trying
the
to
process
think.
early because I remember JW telling us this, and even our attorney,
Yeah.
John, who was great too, he said one thing that holds up deals
Yeah, it's
are
landlords.
are
Yeah.
landlords. So, you usually do that later in the cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't like May 1st we called up our
No,
landlord.
but we
it
did
was
do it a little bit
bit
earlier, and
yeah.
I'm glad we did because we ran into a lot of issues with the landlord. They either
Yeah.
don't respond or they don't want to do it. It's something that should be really easy and straightforward because a group is buying and joining you that has tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars behind them, and so you'd think the landlord would say, hell yeah, sign me up. This person is way more stable than just one single dentist. But it's not always that easy because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So that, I would say, get that done as soon as you can, and I'm glad we did. And then once we had that, it was just talking with legal and finalizing a lot of the things that we wanted in the deal. One piece of advice is also, I mean, I mentioned that we had an attorney. 100% you would never do this without an attorney. That would be the dumbest thing you could ever do. Have an attorney. Have an attorney.
And don't use the DSO's attorney. Have
Don't
your
use the
own
DSO
attorney who is working for you. Everything that is in the deal is in your favor.
Yeah, anytime there's like a dual-sided, whether it's the broker or an attorney, and they try to say they're working on both sides, that's crap. I would never do that.
Well, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But okay.
So, when you sign the LOI and you start to get to know the DSO, you're in that dating phase, right? So everyone says everything nice about each other. I said we're the greatest thing ever, we're the best practice ever, and they say they're the greatest DSO ever, and they'll give us all these different not concessions, but they'll give us what we are asking for. Why you need the attorney is because when the actual contracts comes in, that's the stuff that's written. Mm-hmm. So we also
where all the baggage comes in,
yes,
right?
Exactly. And thank God we have Alex, you have family members who are attorneys, so your mind goes into attorney mode and like you don't trust anyone, you don't believe anything unless it's written. It has to be written down, all that stuff. So
those like 100-page contracts that were sent over, I read all of them just so that I was on the same page with the lawyer and I knew what they were talking about. If I saw any red flags or any things that needed to be clarified, like I highlighted all of that stuff. So that was, I think that's pretty unusual, but like Eric said, like it's important because like going back to the people you talk to, like reference checks on the DSOs, and you're like, how does the structure work? How many of them could actually tell you some of the details of like how the legals part?
No, that was
could
kind
work?
of that was the one concerning, scary part is when I talked to either a lot of partners in the DSO we were with or other DSOs in general. If I asked very specific questions, some people knew it, but a decent amount had no idea. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is where a lot of like the negativity comes in, I think, with DSOs. And you see it all the time on all the Facebook groups is people just don't understand the deal. Make sure you understand it. You are going into probably the biggest deal you'll go into in your life, or one of them.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how little people could like regurgitate the deal to me. And so that's why making sure you have a dental specific attorney who understands it. Mm-hmm. And then you understand the contract. Do not rely on someone else to tell you it. Understand it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we found stuff in the contract that it's not like anything was that bad or there were massive red flags or anything like that. The DSO we partner with is they're transparent. They tell it how it is. That's been good. But I mean, there's some things that were like tweaked a little bit, and we said, okay, wait, hold on. Can we get clarity on this or this? And then we had to negotiate through it. Yeah. And just to make sure we were each communicating with each other well, so when this partnership happened, it didn't go sour fast. And that's even what the head of the DSO said. He was very big on trying to stay transparent because he knew long term it made no sense to have people who didn't understand it. I mean, there were still some people who didn't fully, I don't think fully understood it, but they were they were fairly transparent, and even our broker said that compared to other groups that he had worked with, they were.
Well, yeah,
they were
because you
pretty
don't
good.
want to, partner with a DSO and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, I didn't know that this was an issue with like clawbacks or like things like that where it's
Yep.
like, oh, I didn't know that was in my contract, and it was like, well,
Oh, that was one other thing too we didn't want was
yeah,
clawbacks.
there you go, okay.
So this is one that everyone always complains about.
So
too.
what's a clawback? Explain that to everyone.
Yeah, so that's when you sell your practice, and usually it's to a DSO, and some of your equity can be tied to certain performance metrics.
Yep.
So let's say you sold, and let's use the easy math again.
Yep.
It was $1 million EBITDA. They could maybe want you to grow it to 1.1 million or 1.2,
Mm-hmm.
or if it decreases and goes down 10%
Yep.
or 20% or whatever it is, they can claw back some of your equity. Technically, they could probably claw back money if they wanted to. It depends what's in a contract.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much taking away things
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
And so the group we were with didn't have any clawbacks,
Yeah.
which was nice. But
Yeah,
I would avoid those. I would avoid those like the
well,
plague.
and I think that's where, like you said, a lot of that negativity comes from, is that people, not everyone, but some people are mad over they have to either stay on or work harder or do all
Yeah.
have all of these things, and it was in the contract. And if they
It was
would
in
have
the
just
contract.
and if they
Yep.
would have just like understood that, maybe they couldn't have gotten rid of it, and then that's something for yourself to decide.
Well, yeah. Then you have to make sure, because I think what happens sometimes is you get far enough down the process, and then you see those things in contracts, and then you start to get that FOMO, and you don't want to miss out on it. And so you're like, oh, well, I didn't really want that, but I am just worn out. This has been 8 months.
Oh, maybe.
This is, I'm done. I'm okay with it. Normally I wouldn't be, but I'm just tired. I think what you do a good job of is you always take emotion out of it.
Yeah.
So I think you also have to be prepared that when you get your contract,
Yeah, you gotta
and
start
there's
from
something in
scratch.
there that you don't like, don't do it. You got to start from scratch. It happens.
Yeah.
Hey, quick break here. If you're enjoying Just a Couple Dentists, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It's the best way to keep up with new episodes and hear us argue about dumb stuff and complain about dentistry. And trust me, you don't want to miss that. Now back to the show. But yes, we wanted to make sure there were no clawbacks in there. Mm-hmm. And there weren't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of falls on both parts. Like, yeah, they're, in my opinion, I think they're kind of crappy. I would not want to do one. But if I got pissed after the fact and that was the case, you signed it, right? We signed it. You have to know your stuff, right? So it kind of falls on both parties. So anyways, sidetrack off on clawback rant, right? Then once we agreed, so now in this part, we've agreed on what the valuation is. Everyone's signed off on that. That's good. The contract all makes sense. The final piece that stressed me out so much, and
More than wanting to sell the practice?
yeah, this
Okay,
stressed me out.
which part?
This stressed me out so much. It was about the timing of when to tell the staff.
Yeah, I know.
And it wasn't because I was afraid to tell them or nervous. It was because
you probably were. Yeah, you probably were
I mean,
nervous
maybe
anyway.
a little bit. No, I think
Yes.
yeah.
I'm
okay.
sure.
Yeah, maybe there was some of that. I mean, I think I was like ready to be,
Okay, so
yeah.
so set the stage of like what is normal and what DSOs want.
Okay.
Or what
take
you
it
wanted
from
and what yeah.
like from both perspectives,
Sure.
right? So if it's me as the person that's
Selling. Yeah.
I want to tell my staff when the money's hit my
The
bank
day
account.
after.
Yep.
The
Because
day after
I
you
already
sold.
know it's
Yeah.
good. There's no issues. They can't back out after the fact because money's been wired. It's in my account.
Okay.
So the DSO, or if I'm the buyer, if I were the DSO, I would say, tell them a month before. Tell them way before. Because I want to make sure that, they know before it isn't something that is like thrown on them and then they decide to leave and then I just bought a practice and I just lost all the staff.
Yeah.
Or team, right? I'm the one that says team.
It's all right.
I know
Yeah.
you're influencing me too much.
Revved up on.
So that stressed the hell out of me because I was like, if I tell them, and even if it's like 2 days before or 3 days before,
I know. You thought they were all gonna leave.
They could. I didn't think they were going to, but there is a possibility.
So you thought that if you told them, they were going to say, like, oh, I'm wavering, I'm on the fence now. They were going to somehow walk out. The DSO would say, well,
catch wind.
I'm not buying this practice that has no staff, so the whole deal is off.
Yep, and now I'm stuck with no staff. Or team. And so
and the deals, who cares about that? But like, and the deal didn't go through.
Yep.
So that's like,
or you tell your associate, and they're like,
oh yeah,
I'm
definitely
leaving.
That's yeah, definitely. Don't
I'm done. Like I had different plans or whatever it was, or I didn't want to be part of corporate, whatever the excuse is, and now I've just lost a producer.
Yeah, that.
Or it could happen with hygiene, right? Anyone who's a producer, and that's what's scary. So I went back and forth with them on that, and I was like,
because what did they want? What?
They weren't too bad with it. I think they were like maybe like a week before. Tell them.
Okay.
I think I was like, oh, okay, I'll tell them. But can we have? I think I pushed on. I want then all documents signed.
Yeah.
I want all we are waiting on is for funding. Everything else is signed off. They can't back out. If they back out, there's some big penalty. Like I tried I tried covering my ass so much on that one. So I think they finally got my vibes that I was freaked out, and I think I ended up telling. I think
it was like a day or two before or something like that, wasn't it?
It was either a day or two before.
No.
I think it was after.
No,
I
think it was after because I think with the other offices, the other practices, like the buddies and stuff, they had closed like a day or a week or something before you and stuff. So you're like, okay, at least like their stuff went through. Yeah. And it would be fine.
No, it was definitely. I think it was like we closed on like a Friday, and I told them on
because
Monday.
Someone was supposed to fly in and go over like the new payroll and some like documents and stuff like that, and they couldn't.
For some reason, they couldn't make it in.
They could because
I don't remember the exact reason why. I don't know if they had another office to go to or there was something else came up. But
when did we close?
September.
Yeah, was it the September long weekend?
Oh yeah, it was like Labor Day. Yeah, so I think it was like a holiday weekend.
Yeah, that was exactly it. So it's like we couldn't do it. We closed on Friday, and you couldn't tell them to like the following Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that.
Yeah. So I was happy.
So so it was good for you. But was that added stress needed? Did you have to be worried about it?
No, I think I way overdid it.
Yeah, you way overdid it. Yeah, exactly.
Even though
did anyone leave within the first week?
No one left within the first week, within the first month. None of that happened. But no, that's not a but. There's probably a 1% chance that it's going to happen, but that chance has such big ramifications. Yeah. I was logical enough to know that probably wasn't going to happen, but the potential like downfall of that, I mean, that's like that castle's crumbling if that actually happens. I mean, that would have been awful. So that's why I freaked out.
Okay.
But yeah, so then anyways, that's when, and then we close and that's the end, right? No. So pretty much since then, it's been a little bit over a year now since we had closed. Yeah. Everything has kind of been trucking along as normal, right? As we go through stuff and, the DSO goes through all their,
a partnership's a partnership.
Yeah.
It's
there's give and take on it. Yep. I think there's things where they probably are looking at me and are like, man, he kind of said he was going to do this. Why is he like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure.
I know. You say it.
I'm sure there's some of that. And then on my end, there's a little bit of that too. But I think if you both have the same goal in mind, then I think it's fine. But yeah, it's like any partnership.
Yeah.
Don't go into it. First off, the first few months are like a shit show. It is hectic because they're taking over bank accounts. They have to change EIN numbers. You have to sign this form. You have to sign this form. This thing forgot to get signed. They need to transfer this over here. It is so many moving pieces, and I don't know if disorganized is the right word.
There's no way to really streamline it, I don't think.
You can't.
Like, it's just
like dealing with insurances, all that. There's so many other things you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So it is a mess. Expect it to be a mess for the first 3 months, and then it starts to kind of
settle down
a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then you'll kind of know how the partnership is going to work. So don't take the first few months as like how it's going to end up being the rest of the time.
Yeah.
That would be my advice after the fact.
Real quick, if you're into what we're talking about and want more, check out my newsletter, Just 2 Minutes. It's the dental blog you can actually read between patients. No fluff, no BS, just straight up tips, stories, and insights to help you level up. You can subscribe over at coupleofdentists.com or just hit the link in our show notes. Now back to the pod.
But yeah, after that, I mean, I think it'll be fun. We'll continue to tell our journey of everything, how it's been going, when.
And I think too, just to add, like, having realistic expectations, like, I mean, it was fine for us because we were good operators for those practices. So it's not like we teamed up with a DSO so that they could like really change up all of our systems and add all of these good features. And we could go from this much in profit to, this massive amount because we brought them on. Like, we have to be realistic about that. We didn't have an office that was set up that way. We were, like we said before, we were running them very efficiently. There really wasn't a lot for them to add besides really taking off some of the management stuff.
Yeah, and
like
some of the HR stuff and payroll.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff
things like that. It was just like...
Yeah, they were able to streamline that, find better deals on pricing on certain stuff too.
Yeah.
They were able to. And to go on it, you also can't go in... And our DSO was very transparent about it up front. He did not want to partner with people that were just going to sell, partner, whatever, and step away and be like, I'm clean, I'm not doing anything anymore. The practice is going to go to crap. If you think, like you said, a magic wand's going to get waved and they're going to turn everything great, it's not going to happen. The practices, if you have a good practice, you are probably already running good margins. DSOs are looking for good practices. They're not looking for fixer-uppers or declining practices. So they still expect you to be a partner.
Yeah.
And you have to know that. You still have to be a partner in there. If you want it to grow. If you want it to go to crap, stop doing everything. That's fine.
Yeah. But again, this goes back to the JV shares like you were talking about. You still wanted to make sure that this was a win-win situation for everyone, right? So it was continuing to do the things that worked. So yeah, you couldn't just step back and be like, well, I'm just going to pretend that I'm an associate now and just, at 5:00 I check out and I'm gone. No, there's still things that you need to check. I mean, not everyone's perfect. Not every DSO is perfect. And you still have to check those little things because the money part isn't finished yet.
Nope.
There is still a portion that you need to get paid out for. Mm-hmm. And so still being on top of the numbers is very important.
Oh, 100% completely agree. Anytime I've had some type of issue, it's when I've taken my eye off the ball on something. And that's because it is a partnership. Everyone's going to still make mistakes. And it's just making sure that, you kind of catch each other's. Any other things you can think of to add? I mean, I could go on and on. This would get, but everyone else would find this boring except for me. So,
would you do it again? Would you do this that first piece again? I know we're not finished yet with the DSO, but
so the first piece, I mean, just because it was fun to do. I could. If I was ever doing another second career on something, going into practices and helping them go through ad backs and valuing and all that kind of stuff, I could do that every day. And
I know you do, so and you do get a lot of people calling you just randomly, from Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah, shared our story on it.
Well, yeah, and they'll ask for
fun.
advice, and you like to kind of deep dive with them and be like, "Hey, you got to watch for this and look out for this." So that from that standpoint, selfishly, I thought it was fun for some weird reason. So I would do it. But the second piece is we're still in the middle of it. Yeah. So, I don't know. A lot of people too freak out, or when you see all these posts about, at first it's good and then it turns to shit. And we're in the middle of it. So if the DSO's responsibility, if we're talking just straight financial and money stuff, is
it's their job to do the recap part, right? That's not the partner's job. That's their job as the parent company to make that happen for us. So if they can perform on that, then yeah, it's an awesome deal. If everything went to shit tomorrow, then yeah, we still got more than we would have gotten selling to a private dentist,
Right.
but
So,
it's still
yeah.
It would still probably piss me off.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to rely on the recap.
No. Yeah.
And that's
whatever
something,
you get cash at close is what you got to just,
yeah,
you got to make
you
sure
gotta be
you got to
happy
be
with that
comfortable
number.
with that. Anything else after,
just think of it as like a
anything can happen.
bonus. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just like investing in another business. It could turn to crap.
Totally. Yeah.
And you don't have as much control, so you have to know that. You have to go into that knowing it.
Yeah.
You still have autonomy on how you practice, but you don't have control on when they decide they want to recap. If they decide they want to implement something, you have to go in knowing that and be okay with it.
Yep.
And not just bitch every time something doesn't go your way, because then you shouldn't have partnered.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, I guess that's my answer to your question is to be continued, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll definitely do another episode post recap when that happens, and I'm more than happy to share how what we're able to share, but on how that personally the process went for us. And it would be fun too. I mean, it would be awesome. I'm sure I will convince you on future episodes, Alex, to talk more about what we think the future of DSOs are, the future of dentistry, how this model works long term, all that kind of stuff. Okay. I could geek out on that for hours, so I'll have to convince you to do some episodes on that.
We'll see.
Yeah. Right. All right. Cool.
That's
all you got?
That's it.
All right.